Alright guys, what's going on? It's Jack and welcome back to another video and happy Monday. I hope everybody has a wonderful and fantastic start to the week, and especially when it comes to having a good start to the week, I wanted to start out strong this week, and I wanted to talk about the three juggernaut games or big releases that are going to be coming out excuse me, very soon in the very near future. We're already almost halfway through October. My goodness, time flies. And in early November, we're going to have Call of Duty Vanguard releasing. Mid-November, or towards the end of November, we're just a couple weeks later, we're going to have Battlefield 2042 releasing, and then early December, or within the first third of December, on the 8th of December, we are going to have Halo Infinite releasing. Now, I think it's safe to say that there are both positives and negatives to everything that we've seen, heard, and played with when it comes to the betas of these games. But I think when you look at it overall, every single game, you got to look at everything from a positive standpoint, right? If you take all the negativity out and you just look at the positive standpoint, there's plenty of good reasons to be excited for these games, especially if you're a first-person shooter fan, okay? I think there's something here for everybody, and I just wanted to kind of share that with you so that we can get the bigger picture, because ultimately, when it comes to a lot of the community, as well as even the developers, it's not just the community in terms of how they communicate, but it's also the developers, how they have been communicating, or should I say lack thereof communication. So I think if we truly want to improve things, it all starts with communication. It's no different than a relationship. If you have strong communication, everything else is going to be strong. The chances of everything else going strong and improving and moving on from there increases exponentially. Now, put that aside for a second. When you take all the negativity aside of everything we've seen, played, and looked at, as well as watching other videos, I have to say that there's a lot to look forward to. Now, I'm going to go over that, and I also want to say briefly that I recently saw Drifter's Battlefield 2042 community reactions video, and I actually have to agree with Drifter in terms of what he said in terms of things needing a change. Like when something needs to change due to numbers declining, player counts dropping, and stuff like that, if something needs to change, and if you do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting that change, that's literally the definition of insanity. And that's part of the reason why they put Warzone into the mix, because obviously the numbers were dropping in terms of the multiplayer. And on top of that, again, there needs to be communication, which a lot of the developers, publishers, and stuff like that, as well as the players themselves, could definitely improve upon. I think everybody's guilty of miscommunication, or should I say lack of communication, or even disrespectful communication at this point. So I think every single side of the spectrum can use an improvement on that. But when you look at it this way, for instance, let's take Call of Duty Vanguard. Let's start with Call of Duty Vanguard there for a second, right? Now, again, we're taking all the negativity aside and we're going to talk positive for once, okay? Now, first of all, out of all the developers recently, now, granted, we know Activision is in the mix, but let's take that out of the equation for a second. Sledgehammer Games is usually known to be like the most community-friendly developer out of the three of Treyarch. Treyarch is pretty cocky because of their success that they had with Black Ops 1, 2, and 3. So they're pretty cocky at this point. They used to be the most community-friendly, and then after Sledgehammer Games came in around the World War II time, they basically won the award for that, so to speak. And Infinity Ward is just Infinity Ward. They were actually extremely humble and extremely community-friendly in Infinite Warfare, but the community was so negative about Infinite Warfare that these guys basically, like, God knows what happened. I mean, they're just like, okay, we're going to be as nice to you as possible, and if you keep treating us like crap, then we're going to treat you like crap, and then we're going to create Modern Warfare 2019. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the thought process going in with that one. Again, I'm not entirely sure. I can't speak for them, but when you look at it from a psychological standpoint, doesn't that kind of make sense? But anyway, moving on. When it comes to Vanguard, there's a lot of potential with the game. Now, obviously, the game is releasing with 16 multiplayer maps, which is great. That's awesome. We haven't seen that in quite a while, actually, on release. Let's not forget that the future content and season releases are going to be are obviously still free with maps and stuff like that. We might see a whole bunch of old and new maps at the same time, so there's hope for that. Of course, with the new weapons and stuff like that. The combat pacing is something that I personally think is awesome, because if the game is designed to be a certain way, all you have to do is change the combat pacing in the options menu, or when you queue up to select what game mode you want to play, and I think that's great. So if you like something faster paced, you've got two other options to choose from to increase the pace of the game, despite the fact that it would be a mess. But at least you won't be bored. at least you won't be bored running around looking for somebody that's camping all the way in the corner part of the map that's God knows how far away, and he can hear you coming from God knows how far away, and then he's just going to sit there and then take you out. At least there's potential for high action, which is one of the things that Call of Duty is well known for. Another thing, I've noticed from Vanguard that they brought back the strafing speed, better strafing speed with the assault rifles, even by default. And obviously it's going to be increased even more if you have certain attachments on your weapons, right? So when you look at it from that point of view, it's actually one of the things that actually was bad about Black Ops 3, and even some of the other ones that for a multitude of reasons they just decided to nerf either the stock attachment to the ground or just decrease the strafing speed. It personally makes a difference for me in gunplay. It's one of the reasons why I use this gun here, the Cordite, for instance. There's just so many good things about this gun that I absolutely adore, and I'm basically addicted to the Cordite because of the way it feels, the way it plays, and all that kind of stuff. And it's not even the most powerful weapon. So one of the things that makes Call of Duty good, granted they do it right, is that every weapon should be viable. We don't know if that's going to work out with Vanguard. Probably not, because of the skill-based matchmaking and people are going to be using the best weapon all the time. But you never know. Sledgehammer Games might step it up and say, hey, you know what? We're going to buff a whole bunch of other shit because we are seeing that this gun here is just too fucking strong, and we want people to use more of our other weapons. Who knows? Or they might just nerf that weapon to the ground to balance it if they do it right. I don't know. Weapon balancing has been kind of Sledgehammer Games' Achilles heel, so to speak, when it comes to their development, but we'll see. I mean, in due time, you never know. They might have learned. I mean, if you compare it to, you know, Advanced Warfare to World War II, there definitely was an improvement, but in that aspect. But we'll see what they do with this iteration. But that's just to name a few of the positive things. Now, I want to move on now to Battlefield 2042. Battlefield 2042, obviously, the beta itself was buggy, glitchy, and all that kind of stuff, but let's take a look at the positive here. I personally think that, and I know Battlefield fans might rip me a new one for this, but I don't care. I'm going to speak my mind. You want to rip me, by all means do so. But I think the subtle changes, now again, for Battlefield players, they're big changes, but when you look at the overall product, I take them to be subtle, at least from my point of view. Again, you can disagree with me if you want, but I think the fact that the Battlefield game itself does have a bit of a COD feel to it, or should I say feels more COD-like than ever, and they've managed a way to kind of combine the two in a sense. I mean, there could be still plenty of changes to be had in terms of the infrastructure of the game, as well as how the game itself works to make it even better, and that would make even Battlefield players happy. But I think it's definitely a plus that you have the option to basically mix and match, and to have the smooth type of faster paced feeling of movement that Call of Duty is actually known for, and to inject a little bit of that DNA into Battlefield, in my opinion, is awesome, because it will only bring more players into the Battlefield community, and it will open their eyes about that, and basically it's going to help keep the Battlefield community afloat in terms of the popularity of the game. Nobody wants any game franchise to die, right? We want the Battlefield community to live on. We want the Call of Duty community to live on. We want the Halo community to live on. None of these games deserve to die, and I believe that in gaming there is a place for every single one of these games to exist. And it's the things that are different in terms of the foundation of the game that will get players to try one or the other, or even all three. And you're looking at a player that's mainly a Call of Duty player, although I have played a lot of Halo lately, and I have seen what they're doing in Battlefield 2042, which makes me want to play it. But I decided to step away from the beta because I know all the problems it had. I saw a ton of footage, and I actually had a lot of fun looking at the footage and seeing and knowing about the changes that they made into the game, which actually appeals to me as a player. But I decided to stay away from it so that way I can experience the polished game on release. And on top of that, the things that I saw in the game that were off were just seemed really annoying. So I'm like, you know what, Jack, just wait. It won't be too much longer. You might as well just wait, and you can experience the game on your Xbox Series X, hopefully running at 120 frames a second at 1440p. So that's the way I'm looking at it. And I know that if beta runs, if Battlefield 2042 runs like that, it's going to be a hell of an experience. And Portal mode, I think, is going to be an absolute godsend when it comes to the community and all. There's literally something there for everybody, and that's the kind of feel that I've gotten for Battlefield. That's the kind of message that I've received as a gamer, a lover of first-person shooter games, ever since Battlefield revealed their Portal mode as their third mode, and going over that in depth. I became instantly excited, and then Battlefield, I just became excited for Battlefield. Again, I'm always excited for the next first-person shooter coming out and for the community, but whether or not I play that game just appeals to my personal needs, and there's enough here in terms of what they've added and stuff like that to where it's got me genuinely interested, and I think that's a good thing. I think that more players that play your game, the better. So let's not forget that there's tons of potential to be there. And remember, the developers themselves can also continue to tweak the game for the better as time goes on. I know that gamers' attention spans are not really necessarily that long, really. But when you look at it overall, if you have something that's as customizable as Portal Mode, to where players can literally do almost anything that they to their heart's content when it comes to their flavor of game, including editing the rules and stuff like that, then that should be enough to keep you afloat until the game gets updated to the way to where you want it. And again, these games are designed to last. Now, whether or not they do so is something that remains to be seen, but in time, the games themselves can last. And again, as gamers ourselves, we just need to, it's not our strongest suit to be patient, but I think if we're patient enough, I think that we can definitely be happy in the end and in the long run, because some of us are saying that certain games should be released and that they should be delayed and don't release them, instead of just giving us something that's not fully optimized and fully 100% ready to go like it should be. But the thing is, that's not going to happen. So what do we got to do? We got to have some sort of compromise to where we need to be a little bit more patient, and in the long run, patience can be very rewarding. It just so happens to be that it's our weakness. But I think Battlefield has, in terms of Portal Mode as well, is enough to keep us afloat. But those are my brief thoughts on Battlefield 2042. And of course, moving on to Halo Infinite. Now, Halo Infinite was my #1 most anticipated release, and it still kind of is. I really like all the different games for the different things that they offer. But let's look at the positive of Halo Infinite. First of all, the beta itself was a lot of fun to play. Yes, there are problems with the aiming. Yes, there are problems. There may or may not be problems with weapon balancing and stuff like that. But when you look at the overall design of what they're trying to do, there hasn't been too much change in terms of what the foundation of Halo is. And they could have done big team battle with a hell of a lot more players. And who knows, that might be something that they may bring in the future. Yes, I'm very well aware that Forge not being on release is a big problem. Yes, I'm even more well aware that it's an even huger problem to where you can't even co-op the campaign on release for another 3 months. That is absolutely ridiculous. I 100% wholeheartedly agree with the community itself on that. However, taking the positives, when you look at the base game, and in terms of how the base game plays, first of all, I think the campaign is going to be a huge hit, honestly. And most casual gamers play campaign, and even the most hardcore Halo fans love campaign. So I personally think campaign is going to be a huge hit, and we've been told that we're going to be getting footage really soon. So I'm excited about that. Also, another thing is that when you look at the foundation of what multiplayer is, they have taken away and replaced the problems that the community had with Halo 4 and Halo 5, and made something a lot better, a lot closer to home with Halo, but yet, same time, more accessible to the newcomer, which is very, very important. And it's also got to be in the standards of today. Now, obviously, Halo has a much longer time to kill than your standard first-person shooter these days, because first-person shooters these days and their popularity is all about a faster time to kill. Now, Halo Infinite has improved in this aspect in terms of the time to kill being a little bit faster and the weapons being a little bit more accessible and a little bit more deadly. Granted, some of the weapons definitely need some work, but in terms of the way they designed the game, in terms of its foundation and the direction that it could head, guys, the sky's the limit. This game is also free to play, another positive in terms of the multiplayer. And if you have Game Pass, you can get the campaign free on Game Pass, obviously, because you're paying like what, $15 a month or something like that. So that's how much I pay for Game Pass Ultimate. So when you look at it from every single standpoint, how could you not? You can't really deny that when it comes to every single aspect of these three games, that there's potential. And yes, it will take 6 months for Portal to release, but I'm sorry, not Portal, but Forge. But if Forge is even better than Halo 5 and bigger than Halo 5, according to the community, I was never a Forge guy, but I know a lot of people in the community are. When you put all these three things together, like, if you put all that together and then you just manage to wait, and then the base game and then the campaign and everything else that they iterate into the game keeps you afloat until those 6 months come in, and then you get another layer of Forge, and then you get you have the battle passes that are like, what, 3 months apiece. They never expire. You can constantly work on towards things. they will eventually add in a progression system, a true progression system, because when you look at the amount of time, effort, and love that they've given to the Master Chief Collection after they released it in such a fucked up state, and they kept on updating it, optimizing it, and adding in more and more seasons and more content and all sorts of different things for the community for years after that. If you look at that, and if the whole entire team, instead of just a part of the team that was working on Master Chief Collection while Halo Infinite was in development, if the entire team is actually on board to make Halo Infinite the best that it can be, and if the Master Chief Collection was just a small taste of that, imagine what they can do with Halo Infinite in the long run. So for us as gamers, the biggest thing is that we need to be as patient as possible. Again, not our strongest suit, but it's definitely a necessity that I think is obviously going to pay off. And also to the developers out there, the publishers out there, as well as even us, the community, we need to work on our communications in terms of getting the message out there across. And you devs and you publishers need to work on receiving that message, responding respectfully, and also at the same time applying the things that the majority of your community is asking for. Simple as that. That's all that needs to be done. But anyway, that's all I got for this one, guys. Let me know down in the comments section. And for those of you guys that managed to stick around all the way through, thank you very much. I really appreciate the love. Don't forget to smash that like button if you liked the video. If you didn't like the video, then obviously leave a dislike. And if you really liked the video, consider subscribing. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.